What a day to be alive. Welcome to Rise Up with Rick. We are passionate about helping you extract the most out of every day and exploring and enhancing all things physical, mental and emotional well-being and performance. We are brought to you by runners.com. That's runnez.com, as well as rickmirabella.com. Radio, let's launch now.
G'day and welcome to Rise Up with Rick. Now, this is part one in a magnificent and very important, powerful and close to my heart mental health series we are doing with our guest today. Now, he's a cracker. He's lived some form of life. He's a magnificent man. He's starting a magnificent product that was been going for a long time now, but he does some magnificent work, really gaining attention and really starting conversations, which is what we love. It's Cool to Cry. It's got a couple of branches, but I'll let him chat about it. But what it does instantly is ensure that we have these conversations. It's Cool to Cry. You can see it in the show notes. It's all over the socials. I welcome today Jack Davis.
G'day, Rick. How are you, mate?
Good day, you on, mate. Appreciate your time. Your hair's looking absolutely magnificent today. That is a magnificent mane you've got going on.
Yeah, that's why I had to push back the start times. I had to get it ready for you.
Yeah, that's good. I actually pushed it back, so good from you. But look, he's looking magnificent. He's got a beautiful smile across the camera, but he's doing some magnificent things, and I'll let him tell you about it. But anything that starts conversations and derives awareness towards mental health, emotional wellness, and just having conversations that are going to help people pricks my ears up and our team. And we came across Jack, and we love what he's doing. He's got some magnificent, really awesome merch out there that's really starting to educate and, of course, strive these conversations. He also does a lot of work in the corporate space, which I'll let him talk about, and that's important stuff as well, really important stuff. So, Jacko, where do we find you right now? I like to start where we are currently right now, the last few weeks or present day. And I'd love you to fill the listeners in on how this came to be, how you became this massive advocate for mental health.
Yeah, mate. Thanks. Thanks very much for having me on. Thanks also for those plugs there. I really appreciate it. But maybe I will start with how I got here rather than where I am right now. But just to paint maybe a better picture. And to do that, I'm going to have to talk about some heavy things. There's a mention of mental illness and suicide. So there's just a quick trigger warning for listeners out there that, this might not be in their wheelhouse for them right now. So maybe take a break and come back to it later. But this really all started in my 20s when I was dating a girl called Ellie. And Ellie was young, loud, fun, social, made plans, well-travelled, had a great vocabulary, had a supportive and beautiful family, supportive and beautiful groups of friends. But over a very short period of time, Ellie started to get very sick, and she was no longer the loudest person in the room. She was no longer then able to get the strength and motivation to get out of bed and shower and at times leave the house. So Ellie's mental health had declined very quickly, and eventually the mental illness took over, and Ellie died from suicide. And Ellie was 25 and I was around the same age as well. And all of a sudden, mental illness and suicide was right in our backyard. And this was no longer something that was on the telly or happened to a friend of a friend or was on the other side of town. This was right here. So as Ellie was getting sicker, I wanted to figure out what was going on in her head and figure out ways how I could help Ellie. So I took myself to therapy to find out what this is. But before I could go to that first therapy session, Ellie ended up dying. So these therapy sessions became part fact-finding mission on what is mental illness, what is suicide, what was going through Ellie's mind during those last days, weeks, and months, and also what's grief, how do I do it, and how do I navigate that. So after a batch or a block of therapy, I was able to sort of tick the box of fact-finding about mental illness and suicide. But what I'd found over the years is that I had prematurely halted grief. And I know this because of a lot of thinking, reviewing, finding out patterns about myself, doing a lot more therapy and work on myself. But early days, when after Ellie died, like obviously that's very tragic and heartbreaking. And I would be crying a lot. I'd be crying when I'd be waking up. I'd be crying when I'd be going to sleep. I'd be crying in the car. I'd be crying in the shower. And one day I was getting ready to go to work, and I saw a pair of Ellie's runners in my closet, and I was about to cry, and I said, you know what? No, I'm done here. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to feel sick to my stomach. I don't want that frog in my throat, and I don't want the uncontrollable tears. So I just parked the sadness. I said, no, not today, and maybe not forever. And that didn't mean Ellie was forgotten. She was still there and with me and remembered. But I said no to sadness, and I said no to crying. And then, as you do, life goes on, or life moves forward. So I moved overseas. I got new jobs. I had new partners. All of these sorts of things as you grow up and grow through your life. But what I was finding is that in these, particularly in romantic relationships and close relationships and at work, I was finding that I wasn't presenting myself as the person I wanted to be. I was particularly angry. I was hot-headed. I would say and do things really shooting from the hip and later regretting what I was saying. I was like this bubbling person that was always ready to go, ready to erupt. And I didn't like the way I was treating the people around me and myself. So I'm like, okay, Jack, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to try and fix this because I don't want to be this person. This is exhausting and I'm not liking it. So I would take myself back to therapy, unpick a few things, think I'd solved the problem, come back out of therapy, same patterns. So in and out of therapy, in and out of seeing those patterns over a number of years and figuring out what was going on. And even just now, like I talk about it and it feels like, it's just so simple. And it feels like it was a light bulb moment or a penny drop moment, but it wasn't. There were so many things that I'd had to go through to figure out what was going on and why I was this person that was his operating state or default state was happy, angry. And I was able to figure out what was going on. And what I was doing is I wasn't paying attention to all of my emotions, because back when Ellie died, I'd said no to sadness. And so I was blocking out sadness, and that was coming out in unhelpful ways and in unhelpful scenarios, particularly anger, right? Which I didn't want to be that person. So as soon as I started to let more emotions in, and particularly sadness, I could feel sadness come in because I'd be watching movies, hearing stories, listening to songs, and I'd start to cry. And I'm like, okay, I remember this. I'm going to let it in. I'm going to let it come in and wash over me and be part of me. Once that was happening and the sadness was coming back in and appreciated and being lived with, the anger was still there and it remained, but it was no longer one of these things where I would react poorly and in an unhelpful way to others and myself. It was now becoming something that I could regulate and know, like, you are allowed to be angry, man. This is normal. Just what are you going to do with this feeling? How are you going to react with it? Are you going to say something stupid? Are you going to do something you might regret later? Or how do you want to react to it? So I had sadness coming back in. I had anger being acknowledged and regulated, and then happiness and joy continuing. So no longer was I this happy, angry, ecstatic, erratic person. I'd become like this. And all of a sudden, I was no longer exhausted thinking about how I was going to get through the day or the week or the month or the rest of my life, thinking like, I'm built like this. You're never going to be able to be A. You're never going to be able to be C. You'll never find another relationship that you'll be happy in. You'll never be able to be settled in your mind. And then once all these things started to calm down from an emotional perspective, or I was giving every emotion the respect, all of my inner thoughts and those ruminating thoughts started to settle down as well. And my shoulders became less tense. I was less The knees weren't jelly legs or anything like that. And rather than having arguments, I was able to have discussions. I'm like, this is brilliant. This is the way I want to live. This is now a sustainable way that I can live. My relationships were getting better with people around me, friends, family, and romantic relationships. And my relationship to myself was unbelievably better as well. So I'm like, cool. And this body of work behind it has started to pay off. I'm like, this is fucking brilliant. So I'm getting on with my life like that and living my life like that and loving it. And in 2001, a mate's dad died from suicide. So on one hand, I'm like, this is really confusing because we've got Ellie down here who's young, female, and just about to start her career. Then we've got Matt up here who's older, male, and he's retired. He finished his career. Then what about all the other people in between Ellie and Matt and on the outside of the people of Ellie and Matt that could be affected by this? Because these are two, on paper, these are two very different people, but dying from the same thing. So I'm thinking to myself, I've been put into an unfortunate circumstance here. I'd love to be able to do something. I want to do something with the unfortunate circumstance, but I want to do something with what I've learned to try and prevent these types of things happening again. And so there was a lot of brainstorming, sketches, horrible ideas that came across that I was working with. And eventually I landed on It's Cool to Cry, which is a clothing brand that aims to make mental health cool. And I chose clothing because it's something that people can wear day in, day out. And I chose It's Cool to Cry because this is something that when you read it and when you see it and you're down the street, it really hits you between the eyes, not in a way that it's supposed to be confronting, but a way that some people can start thinking about, what does that mean? And because it's on someone's clothes, maybe they get a chance to have that conversation with that person. And then we're starting to have mental health conversations in an ad hoc, informal way. And we're not relying on the need for drinking, drugs, a shit hitting the fan moment or professional intervention. We can start having them right now for free with family and friends, maybe even strangers, to prevent the likelihood or to prevent a potential downfall where we find ourselves in positions of, young Ellie or Matt. So I'm not playing in this suicide intervention or prevention area. I'm going right back to the start here to try and get it right at the start, nip things in the butt. And the theme of the brand is to have these conversations, but the core of it is to normalize it so that we can have them more. And I mentioned before it's about making mental health cool, and it's not about getting cool designs and gun designers and graphic designers to put logos or their thoughts in a picture and then on a cool hoodie. What I'm trying to do here is make mental health more approachable, because if it's more approachable, we talk about it. And if we talk about it, we get comfortable with it. And if we get comfortable with it, we're cool with it. And we can make mental health cool. And I want this to be the mantra and this to be the feeling behind the brand, and have people wearing It's Cool to Cry, similar like when they put their runner's top on, or they put their Nike top on, or their Puma top on, and they're going to the gym. They're prepared, or they're preparing for a physical health challenge. The same feeling I want to evoke with people that are wearing It's Cool to Cry, whether that's on their chest right now or it's in their closet, is that they're prepared or preparing for a mental health challenge, and start to give people the realization that mental health is normal. And just like our physical health, we can all work on and improve it. This is where I want to really hammer home here, is that we can all work on and we can all improve our mental health, just like our physical health. We're all affected by it. So I'm getting on a bit of a roll here. Sorry, Rick.
Keep going, brother. No, you're doing magnificent.
So fast forward to 2023. It's this time last year, and I'm running It's Cool to Cry as a bit of a love thing. It's a bit of a do after work, do on the weekends, a bit of a passion project, selling a couple of T-shirts here and there to family and friends. I get made redundant this time last year, and I'm like, okay, well, what do I really want to do here? Do I want to go and find another job and work for someone else, or do I want to push the chips in and have a crack at It's Cool to Cry? And so I said, shit, all right, let's do it. In the middle of a cost of living crisis, I try and start a business, but we're doing it. And the last 12 months has been amazing, because without the full-time love and energy and time, I don't get to have conversations like this, Rick. And we don't get to have a cool chat, and I don't get to find out more about your history, thoughts, beliefs about mental health. And I'm going to pick up some nuggets here today. I'm sure that I'm going to be able to use now, whether it's in my ads, my email marketing, my socials, or my mental health workshops, that I can say, right, well, this is the way Rick thought about it. Let's see how, if other people think about it that way, and how do we articulate it to the masses that makes it really simple. Because mental health, there's just so much information out there. And I think part of the reason why we're not doing it, and we're not really good at it yet, is because it's really confusing. It is really confusing. So I'm just trying to simplify. I'm trying to simplify mental health by making sure people know that it's normal and they're allowed to talk about what's on their mind, because what's on their mind is completely relevant to them and relevant to their situation at the moment. And hammer home that all emotions are equal. We shouldn't be parking emotions. We shouldn't be hiding from emotions. Let's welcome them all. They're here for a reason. They're all normal. They're all natural. So let's go ahead and have a real good crack at starting these mental health conversations, not because they have to be perfect. It's because we should be starting to practice them. And the more we practice, like our gym, like our running, we're going to get better at it, and we're going to get more comfortable at it, and we're going to see the benefits. Whether it's not the short run, we're going to see it in the medium and long term.
Mate, fantastic. Thanks for all that. That's brilliantly put. You can see the passion and the genuine care in Jack's voice there. But it's a hell of a story as well, from a young fella thrust into it. But also behind the scenes, doing your own work on yourself, a lot of internal work. You're right about these conversations. They've got to happen more. And I'm certainly been guilty in the past. Like, I'm a 41-year-old male who grew up playing football my whole life and in sport, and have done a lot of internal work clearly for 20 years. But there's no, like, you grew up not having those conversations. Okay. So, and I think people need to realize, whether you're in the depths of it, that nothing is off limits, and nothing is too taboo. There's nothing to be ashamed of, no matter how bad it seems in your world or mind at the moment. That there's so many people that are willing to listen, no matter what you think. There is no judgment. And just what you're doing, what we try to do from a bit of a different way of thinking. But what you're doing every single day is breaking down boundaries, and it's not just depression, it's anxiety, it's other anxiety disorders, whether it's be bipolar, OCD, PTSD, genuine clinical depression, whatever it may be. There's no hierarchy. If you need to have a chat, you have a chat. And what Jack and the team are doing is brilliant. And I agree with the putting the gear on and walking out for a coffee and being proud to wear it, because what it does evoke these conversations. You don't have to go too in depth all the time, but just knowing that people are there to listen all the time, because people are there to listen. Like you said, that we live in an amazing community of human beings, and usually the right people will be there to listen.
Mate, like 100%. I think a really good way to think about, because what you've said a couple of times there, is people are willing to listen. People are willing to listen. Now, if we thought about our best friend or our partner right now, and if they said to me, Jack, or if they said to you, Rick, something's on my mind at the moment. I'm not sure how to think about it. I'm not sure how to talk about it. Do you mind if we just have a sit down and I can chat to you about my mental health? I would be like, yeah, mate, or yeah, Dale, of course. And I'm guaranteed, Rick, you'd be like, yes, Dale, yes, mate, let's have a sit down, let's do it. So if we know that we're going to be there for our best mate, and we know they're going to be there for our partner, we should really know that they're going to be there for us. So let's put the shoe on the other foot and think about it the other way. Be like, will they be there for us? Of course, the same way that you would be for them. This is how relationships and friendships work. So let's trust the relationship, trust the friendship, and use them. Use these friendships to try and navigate these difficult moments, which, requires a lot of trust from both ends and both parts of that conversation. But this is why we've got mates, and this is why we've got family, and this is why we build connection, because life is tough. Life is tough. We're trying to make it harder on ourselves by not getting help from other people. So there's no shame in putting your hand up and saying that you're struggling with something right now. And we've got to be better, way, way better at saying, yeah, I just need a chop out right now. You're not weak. You're not brave for keeping it in. It's not courageous for keeping it in. We know that bottling our emotions and bottling our feelings doesn't work. The real courage now is to be able to not waiting for someone to say, are you okay, Rick? Or are you okay, Jack? And then double down and say, nah, mate, I reckon this is happening. And mate, I reckon that is. The real courage is saying, fuck, Rick, I need a chop out right now, mate. I've had this thing bouncing around my head for a month and I just can't shake it. Do you mind if we just have a coffee? Would you mind if we have a walk? And can I just chat to you about what's going on in my head? And
that's a good point.
That's the real thing.
Very good point. And that's what I know your bread and butter, and it's a big driver and passion of yours. But I was getting to that about ways to approach it. But the walk is a great idea. Now, listen, we are talking to people that feel like they have got someone. That you've always got someone, no matter how isolated or alone you feel. You might be listening to this and thinking, you two don't have a fucking clue what you're talking about. I've got no one. I've got no one. And I can imagine, and I'll let Jack speak to that. But it's really important that you have, I promise you, you've got someone at the end of a line. You've got someone that you can talk to. Now, we don't want to be doing Jacko said about we want to be catching it, nipping in the bud right here. But if you've had stuff going for 5, 10, 15 years and it feels like it's hitting new times, I need you to reach out to people. There's always me and Jack will pick up the phone. We'll listen. There's strangers that'll listen because people care. It's not you do matter. And I think when you're in the depths of some dark spots, you forget that a conversation and then can flow on like a snowball. So it's in a really good way. If you just open up to Jack, and I'll let him talk to about the ways to approach this situation if you are in these dark times. A walk is great. I think a moving chat's great because you don't have to feel like you're sitting and under the pressure of sitting. What about Jacko? If someone's in a real tough spot, like really struggling, maybe it's been years on end, maybe it's quick and accelerated, and they feel they can't talk to anyone, but they've got someone in mind or something gets triggered a conversation. What's best for them to start the conversation flowing for the individual that's not well?
Yeah, cool. I love it. I love where this conversation's going, mate. Because in a few of my ads and videos on the socials, I get a lot of comments, especially from blokes saying men can't talk, or there is no safe space for men to open up. And I get frustrated with this because this sounds like an excuse. And I'm not trying to call people out here. Might be, let's call it tough love. Because a safe space will not be built for anyone. You are allowed and you can go and build your own safe space. Define that how you will. But for me, and a safe space would be with a person I can trust, probably in a quiet area, and probably with no interruptions. So that is a safe space. So if we can, no one out there is going to go and create that for us. We have the power to go and create that very easily. So creating that safe space can be done. Now, how do we go and do it? How do I approach Rick? I'd say, Rick, here I'll do 3 real easy ones. Rick, my head's fucked at the moment. I need to chat with you. Can you please give me 15 minutes? Rick, this might sound a bit embarrassing or a bit silly, but I'm actually not sure how to work through some thoughts I've had at the moment. Can I just have your trust? Can I have you for a little bit today just to be the sounding board for me that I need? Say, hey, Rick, I trust you, I love you, and I need it back right now. Can I just talk to you about something which I've never spoken to anyone about before? Set the conversations up like that so that Rick knows or the other person knows exactly what's going on, and so that they can give you the respect that you need for that conversation. Now, Rick just said if anyone out there doesn't have anyone to chat to, they can call up Rick or call up Jack. If anyone out there does call me up, I don't know you from a bar of soap. So what am I going to do? I would do exactly the same thing that if my brother, my partner, my mum, a few of my best mates, anyone was coming to me about this. And all I can do, and the best thing that I can do is listen. And the best thing I can do is be there. So if anyone is on the other end of these conversations, the best thing you can do is actively listen, so that you know that person knows that you're being listened to, they're being listened to. So you actively listen by asking probing questions, leading questions, great questions, and repeating back to them in your own words so that you understand it yourself and that other person knows exactly what's going on, and knows that they've been listened to as well. And then as the conversation goes and goes and goes, and it might be coming down to winding down, there are 3 ways it can end. 1, the person listening can say, hey, thanks for chatting with me. Is that all you want to chat about? Do you want to keep chatting? Now that we've stopped chatting, do you need me to help you with anything? That's the 3 really great options to go with, because if someone, one of you listeners out there calls me and talks to me for 45 minutes for an hour about what's going on in their life, and it could be 10 years, 15 years of thoughts bottled up into an hour, and I say to you, hey, yeah, you should do this and you should do that. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? I sound like a fuckwit because I've just tried to solve all of their problems in 5 minutes. That's not fair. I can't solve anyone's problems in an hour. A therapist can't do it. A therapist can help you do it, of course, but there is no obligation to fix, and there's no obligation to solve as the person on the other end of that conversation. The best thing we can do is be there for that person who's showed a shitload of trust and is obviously loves and respects you so much to have it. That's all you need to worry about, is that you've done an amazing job just being there. And for the person talking about the problems, getting them out of your head will frame it differently for yourself. You've also got someone there that you know and trust and knows that if you need a chop out, you can get the chop out. And then from your brain's point of view, your brain loves it. Your brain loves it when you can properly identify and speak about how you're feeling. There's a part of your brain that will go bing, bing, bing. And as soon as you know what you're talking about in terms of what your brain is feeling, your brain has a soothing mechanism that soothes your brain and helps you navigate it properly. So there are so many things that I've just said just then, but the important thing is that finding a safe space is up to us. And for the other person on the other side of the conversation, you're not there to fix, you're just there to listen. And this is a hard one, especially for blokes. Well, I found it very hard for a long time because I come from a long line of fixers. My mum's a fixer, my dad's a fixer, and I was a fixer for a long time. And it's not right. It's not right because it discounts everything that the person is talking about. It discounts all of their thoughts that they're having over and over again, potentially for where it was last 3 months, 3 years, or 15 years. So we're just there for them to show them our love and support.
Really brilliant advice. Advice that is going to help thousands, tens of thousands. Listen to it over and over. It's hard. I can sympathise with both ends of that spectrum. I also want to fix people straight away, but you're right. It's just there to listen, and be there and guide, but just be there and say when I'm happy to catch up daily. Give me a text, whatever. We can have a walk every 3 days, whatever it may be. And definitely on the other end of the shoe, which I dare say a lot of us have been as well, just opening up to those people. And no matter how weird it sounds, and it's not weird. Like everyone's brain's built differently. It's not your fault. It's no one's fault. Like Jack was feeling unwell last week, so was I. We both had a flu or something. There's no difference. The way you are born is your chemical makeup. It's the way it is. But like Jack said, the more you can speak about it and get it out of your mouth, then the flow-on effects from a neurotransmitter point of view is second to none. And apart from the fact, from a physical sense, you're not burying it for 15, 20, 30 years. Now, if you feel like you can discuss things with someone that's magnificent, and then we're going to move on later to what we can do day to day. But it's a really big starter. And like Jack said so brilliantly, it's not about his main passion, the why he's doing what he's doing, is because he doesn't want to be having these conversations at the end of the spectrum. He really wants to start opening these conversations up before they grow into something they're not. So, like, if me and Jack have a conversation because I see a T-shirt or I see him speak somewhere, then that's going to help me down the line, and maybe it doesn't escalate into something far greater. So I love what you're doing, and it's not going to be measurable or tangible, mate, because people are having conversations because of you already. So no doubt you've stopped a few things in their tracks already, and it's really important. It's really important. But that's great advice from the point of view of conversations, which you said so well. Sorry about that. Go back and listen to that. Go back and listen to that. If you think there's someone around you struggling, listen to the where Jacko said about the how do we really approach the situation if we're listening. If someone approached us, how would you approach the situation if you knew someone was struggling, mate? With all your knowledge now, all your real good anecdotal and absolutely objective work, how would you approach the situation? You had a friend, a cousin, a workmate, anybody, because you obviously anyone you come in contact with that you knew was really doing it tough.
Yeah, and this is a great question again, mate. And this is where mobs like Are You OK Day have really led the charge and have been so amazing in trying to get people chatting. And let's just use that. That's a really easy one to start with because we all know it. So if we can ask someone, look, are you okay? And let's pretend they're going to play hardball with us and they're going to say, no, I'm fine. But you know something's going on. So
I'll interject there. Oh, sorry to interject. They 100% will. But not 999 out of 1,000 they will. I will. And I'm fucking in the game for 20 years. So they will. So that's a great start.
Yeah. So then we really want to find out what's going on, not because we're nosy, but because we want to help. So what do we do next? So we would look at all of our questions would be around the person's behavior, not the person. So let's say this person was rocking up to late work a bit and they weren't their happiest self. So we would say, are you okay? They would say, fine. And I'd say, look, Rick, I appreciate that, but I've just noticed a little bit lately that we started to rock up to work a little bit where you're usually on time. And I noticed that, you're usually around up and about and happy and a go-getter. It seems like you've been a bit off lately. And it's not the difference in that conversation is like, you're not yourself, or you've been grumpy, or you're not happy. It's like, I'm noticing this. So we're using I statements about what the behavior is of the person at that time. So we try and we also try and ask open-ended questions and not leading questions, like saying, you're okay, yeah? That would lead the person to say, yeah, I'm fine. So like, what about how are you feeling? And if we know something that's in their life at the moment, and let's say they've just lost their job and that you can start to feel a few things are starting to unravel, a great way to go about something like that would be, hey, how are you feeling? They're going to say, I'm fine. And you could say like this, look, I know you unfortunately lost your job recently. If that was me, I would probably be feeling something like this, X, Y, and Z. Are you feeling any of those feelings? And start to try and coax out something. Just get something and follow that bouncing ball to try and get them talking. And whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter, because we are really good at talking once we've got that safe space or once we've got that platform. And just ask those gentle, open-ended questions to try and get some sort of momentum into the conversation. And once you get that, it'll start to flow. It'll start to go back and forth, and we can start to ask people more and more about how they're feeling about certain circumstances to get the conversation going. And that's what's going to help them, and that's what's going to help you keep the conversation going, because you can just keep grabbing on to the next bit that they're saying and just getting coax more information out of them by asking gentle questions, using I statements, being empathetic, and putting yourself in their shoes a little bit as well. I think that always helps.
Yeah, that mate, fantastically said. And we haven't spoken about this off air. I knew Jack. I could tell he was going to come with the really good stuff. That's brilliant, mate. Like the I statements are fantastic. It's really, really letting them know it's about that they feel like they're heard without being heard. So
Mm.
if this was me, or if I would feel like this, or this is how I would, I'm here for you. I can understand, and it just gives you a bit more. Well, apart from empathy, I guess authenticity to listen, and of course, open-ended questions. Great one, because it's not you're not trying to fix it or put a full stop on it by saying you're good, aren't you, mate? Like that. It's about opening up, which is fantastic. The I statement's it's a big one because it's not easy conversations to commence. But if we can make it easy, Jack, then the life, your whole world is an easier place.
Yep, yep, for sure. And look, I know that these conversations are hard. I love having them, and sometimes they're still. I find them really hard to begin. But that's where you just got to go. Fuck it. I'm starting this conversation. I don't know how it's going to end up, and this is whether I'm having some sort of a problem or I'm approaching someone. Once it's out in the open, and once there's a bit of flow with the conversation, then it becomes much more easy. I actually get asked a bit, how do you know when it's time to talk about something? And I use this thing called a timeline tool. And if there's something in my head, bouncing around in my head, and then it's been 24 hours, I'm like, okay, I'm happy to sit with that for another 24 hours. And if it gets to 48 hours and it's still bouncing around in my head and I'm not happy with it being in my head any longer, then that's when I put a pin in it and go, right, Rick, I need a chat. Have you got time on the phone? Or Mum, have you got time on the phone for 10, 15 minutes? I just need to hash this out for a bit. If I can live with it for 48 hours and I can live with it for another week, let's say, I go, okay, now that feeling or the feelings I'm associating with that scenario or that circumstance, that's evolved or evaporated, different to burying. I'm not burying this anymore. Now, after a week of this has gone past, I'm like, okay, I can live with this. That's fine. I can park it. But I like people to put well, not people, I personally put in hard timelines because then we keep ourselves honest, because mental health very different to physical health, that it's not numbers and it's not how we look in the mirror, and it's so hard to gauge. So I like putting really hard boundaries in, which is this timeline tool to say, right, I don't like this thing bouncing around in my head anymore. It's 48 hours. Let's try and tease it out with someone before it becomes something bigger and something more sinister potentially.
That's fit, mate. That is pure gold.
Mm.
If this is for the individual, if it's become a 48 hour, 72 hour, but it's genuinely all you can think about, or it's taken over your life, it's time. So the timeline tool, that's fantastic. And 7 days, 8 days, dissipation, you can live with it. It's not even a thing. It's just you're walking alongside it. That's probably you can move on and we'll move forward. But if it's all encompassing and it's overwhelming and it's 24, 48 hours, that is timeline tool, pure gold from Jack Davis. You talk about this. We're talking about a lot of talking today, and obviously a big part of what I do is setting up practices to weaponize yourself and this kind of stuff. So we'll talk about that in a tick. And I know you've got your own stuff, which we love. But before we move on from the talking, which we never want to stop talking, so that's always a huge part of weaponizing yourself in your own search for optimum mental and emotional well-being. Is there anything else from a conversational point of view? Like obviously, it's cool to cry. I love where you've come into this and you've said it's okay to are you okay day and this kind of stuff. Fantastic initiative. Your stuff is just about walking down the street, seeing people in a theatre, at the MCG, having a coffee, and just seeing the logos, the tops, and just saying that's fantastic. Because I think what it does as well is even if you don't say anything at the time, if you see it, it just makes you feel a little bit warmer and a little bit more connected, and a little bit saying, you know what, I know these tops and these organisations out there. I think it's fantastic, and I think it makes the world a much better place. So subconsciously, I think that's a great message as well, which I think is fantastic. But is there anything else consciously or from a conversational piece that you think that we haven't covered, mate, that you think we need to do a bit more, whether it's kids, schools, parents, at the very pointy end of some serious mental illness or any of this stuff that we haven't covered off?
I'll probably steer clear of like the very pointy end of mental illness and suicide intervention and prevention because I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor, I'm mental health first aid trained, but this is a real specialized area. What I will say about people that are down that in that sort of area of real dire hurt and pain is that if you are in that spot, please just keep pushing, keep being kind to yourself and keep showing up. If you're looking after someone in that area, please just keep looking after them, keep checking in on them, and keep being that person, keep being that rock if that's what you need to be for them. There is ways out. There is always a way out. Just be there for that person, and for that person that's struggling, I fucking keep pushing, keep pushing. You will get through this. But if we're going to go back down here and back into for those people included, all the way down to people, someone that's never ever spoken about their mental health, I want to draw a really good analogy between physical health and mental health to try and unlock some thoughts around mental health and shift some attitudes to try and encourage people to start talking about things sooner rather than later. So, analogy I like to use is a lot against physical health. So, we look after our physical health to prevent physical illness. We can look after our mental health to prevent mental illness. We use diet and exercise to say prevent a heart attack. The same way we can be talking about our feelings and emotions before they become overwhelming to prevent potential mental ill health. So if we can do those sort of things and think about our mental health like that, let's start to put it in line with how we think about physical health. We can start to talk about things more. And there's an old saying in this world that says, if you've got a sore knee, you get your knee checked. If you've got a sore head, you go get your head checked. I think that saying has had its time, it's run its race, because what it doesn't do, it doesn't take into consideration the levels of pain that people might be in that need to get their head checked. So I like to talk about a mental health pain scale and compare it to, again, a physical health pain scale. So if you're on a physical health pain scale, whether you're at a 2 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 in pain, you go get those checked out because you want to get the 8s checked out before that becomes something really chronic and potentially something nasty and something we can't reverse. We want to get the 2s checked out because we don't want that to become a 3, a 4, or a 5 and raising up that pain scale. And we don't want other 2s compounding to become something else. We've got to think about our mental health the same way. If they've got a scale, whether we're on a 2 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, we want to get the 8s checked out because we don't want that to become worse and chronic and maybe something we can't reverse. The same way we want to get our 2s checked out and start talking about our 2s and start believing our 2s are worth talking about because we don't want that compounding or becoming a 3, a 4, or a 5. So if we can think about our mental health like that, where our 2s are worth talking about because we know that they could end up as 8s. So let's be courageous enough to put our hand up early and say, I need to have these chats now. I need to have these chats now because I don't want them to be getting worse before it can be too late, irreversible, or we have to do a lot more work to get those 8s down to 7s and 6s and 5s. And I use a final analogy where I compare 2 cancer patients in the hospital. And cancer patient A has been diagnosed with cancer and they've got 1 year to live. No more, no less. That's a shit card to be dealt with. That's horrible. They'd be devastated, heartbroken, maybe angry. 365 days. No more, no less. Cancer patient B, right next to them, has been given 2 years to live. No more, no less. That is a shit card to be dealt with as well. Probably feeling angry, devastated, heartbroken. Now, because cancer patient B has an extra year to live, but still only has 2, does that mean this person can't complain and can't be upset about their scenario because this person, a cancer patient A, has it worse? Of course not. You're allowed to be upset about having only 2 years to live. So this is where we stop comparing our problems when it comes to mental health, because someone will always have it better and someone will always have it worse. So for me, if I can't talk about my anxiety about going to work tomorrow because someone else has clinical depression, that discounts all my problems. My problems are relevant to me right now, so I should be allowed to talk to them and get through them and work on them. So that mental health is not a pissing contest. It's not something we can compare and say, because someone has it worse, I can't talk about my problems. So let's start to think about it differently, in that right now, relatively, our problem is our problem, and I want to get through it. How do I get through it? I need to find that person. I need to have those conversations, and I need to start to look at these issues sooner rather than later, so we don't have a greater problem in our hands down the track.
Fantastically put, mate. Fantastically put. Really well put. And we live in an age where people are aware, and it's a big passion of mine. It's obviously it's your everyday, but we need people to understand this, that there's so many people out there. I know we've waxed lyrical about it for 50 minutes, but I need people to listen to what Jack said a few times, because it's important and it's going to help you down the track. A 2 out of 10 is the same. There's no bigger or lesser conversation. You have the conversation and you make it normal, which is what Jack and the crew are doing. They're normalizing these chats, and if you've got a walking group or a jog, or you can just have a chat. Like, you don't have to advertise it, but you find the right. You go back to what Jack was saying about who's around you, and the people you trust and feel comfortable and safe with. You make your own safe place, and that was brilliantly put as well. I think you're doing great things. I definitely know you're doing great things as far as communication and opening up lines in 2024, when we have got an epidemic on our hands. In a way, I think you're doing great things in raising awareness and trying to nip it in the bud far earlier than that. How do you weaponize yourself, mate? I know clearly open conversations and the timeline toolbox and this kind of stuff. How do you weaponize yourself day to day?
Yeah, another great question. And some of these answers I've given in the past really lend itself to physical health activities that have mental health benefits. So a physical health activity that has a great mental health benefit for me is waking up and going for a walk straight away. And I don't check my phone until I get to a certain part of the walk. And I don't check work emails until I get to a certain part of the walk. And just to give myself a bit of space from chaos, let's put it like, why would you wake up and have 20 different people barge into your room shouting out what they want? Why would you wake up and go on your phone straight away getting the same thing? So I try and give myself a bit of distance. I'm pretty selfish in the morning like that, and give myself an hour or so just to cruise, go for a walk, get a little coffee, either tune out with a podcast or start to plan my day and how I want to plan my day. And this early morning walk and movement does 2 things. It gets me going, gets me moving. It also gives me sunlight early on in the morning, which is going to help me at the end of the day, which is another thing that I like to prioritize. I'm definitely not very good at it. I'm trying to get better at it, but that's getting a decent amount of sleep and practicing good sleep hygiene, which actually starts at the start of the day by kickstarting your circadian rhythm with a decent bit of sunlight in the eyes. So that early morning routine or regime is very important to me. And throughout the day, not when I'm not at my desk, like, it's obviously hydration and decent food. I know that if I haven't had enough water, or if I'm not eating well enough a few meals in a row, that can start to make me feel sluggish or tired, and I'm not concentrating. And I'm not even saying I'm at 100% of my capabilities 100% of the time. One, that's impossible, but I just know if I need to rejig something and I can point at my food or I can point at my hydration, that's a good one just to look at. And then I like getting out to the gym a couple of times a week, going for a run a couple of times a week. But what I'm mentioning here, a lot of these are physical health activities with mental health benefits. One that I think gets overlooked time and time again, and I definitely didn't go on about this enough when I get asked this question, and that's just hanging out in a relaxed atmosphere with your mates, family, or friends, because that's going to build connection, and that's great and that's fun anyway. And more often than not, if you're willing just to put a little bit out there in terms of yourself about not being perfect and not having it all dialed in and maybe struggling with something, you're going to be able to have these conversations with your mates or with your family or even with colleagues in a really informal, helpful way that can start to get you rethinking about things that might not have been going very well in your head at that moment. So socializing, and this is not an everyday thing. You can pretty quickly wear out your social battery if you do that every day. But just keeping that in mind that you've got so many, we've got people around us that know us really, really well, and we can use these people to help us with our mental health by just informally chatting about what might be going on and helping each other. So there's some things there. Also, another big one for me that I've tried to exercise more is put boundaries in place. Stop saying yes. Don't have to say yes to everything. You can say yes, but, or no, but if, sort of thing, and just make sure that you're not giving yourself to everyone all the time, and just rein it back in when you think you need to rein it back in. And that's just trying to make things a bit more manageable, and everything in doses is a good one as well.
Couldn't have said that any better myself. Jacko, that's magnificent. I'm not going to add to that too much because you guys hear me say this stuff all the time, no doubt. Everything Jack said, obviously, is right from my inbook, perfectly done. You got to be a bit selfish in the morning, mate. Otherwise, we run programs about this all year long with corporates and the like, and everyone else. It's about setting yourself up, being a bit selfish, oxygen mask on first. Otherwise, you're no good to anyone. So, and then that parlays, once you can do that morning on morning, you become you become your optimal self, the person you want to be. So everything you said, movement, sunlight, mindfulness, and space. A really good analogy of the 25 people knocking at your door in your bedroom. Love that. Really love that. Really good call about the phone. Awesome. Throughout the day, obviously those little non-negotiables, one percenters, whatever you want to call them, but make them non-negotiables. Movement, water, hydration, and the right fuel, maybe mobility breaks, walk breaks, whatever it is. And I think we're aware of this, just not attaching yourself to things that maybe subconsciously you're addicted to, whether it's guilt, anxiety, or reacting. You said it yourself about yourself off the top of the call, the way you were reacting in those periods of your life. And we all do it. And if we can be aware, whether it's with the right help and therapy, or we can work through it on our own, like a lot of people do as well. Just let's not react to those. Let's not react and have those negative emotions. Let's not attach anything to it. Let's just continue to walk alongside it, which I think if you can do this on your own, if you're a 2 out of 10 at the moment, like Jack was describing, this stuff combined with the conversations, community, sleep, he said, brilliant about sleep. The community was fantastic. Organic, authentic communities, whatever they may be in your life, a couple of really natural catch ups. Not only does it start conversations, but it also gives you the base of which you might want to have a conversation in 5 months because you've had those natural organic catch ups moving and everything feels a lot easier for you because you've listened to people talk and you can trust and love them, and they'll trust and love you. So really good. The community is a huge part, and we do a lot of stuff with longevity stuff, Jacko, and everything you mentioned, mate, of course, movement, mindset, mindfulness, diet, exercise, and the last one being connection is everything. So if you feel like, we said about 40 minutes ago, if you feel like you've got no one in that space, apart from me and Jack, please, there are definitely people you can reach out to, professionals, and we'll put them all in the show notes, of course. But Jack said it so brilliantly a few minutes ago. So make sure we go back and listen to those parts that really affect you. Mate, you've been fantastic. I know you're going to tell us where we can find you because I want people to reach out to you now. But also, before we finish up, is there any final words for anybody out there, mate? I reckon you've spoke to everyone, which has been fantastic. But if there's any final words, great man.
Yeah, I think probably the most important thing, if you've got this far, this is the most important thing that I'll say is that I think there's a disconnect in why we're not talking about. Some of us aren't talking about what we're feeling, and it's because we don't have the vocabulary. 100% can attest to this. I can empathize to anyone out there because, on average, all of us know three emotions: happy, sad, and angry, and there are shitloads more than that. So, the best thing, if you're willing to talk about your mental health right now, the best thing to do and the thing that will move the needle the most is to go and learn more words about emotions and learn more words about how to describe what you're feeling, because that will give you the best ammo to have the best conversation, to give your brain and your heart the best chance to be satisfied with how you're feeling. Then it also gives the person on the other side of that conversation to know exactly how you're feeling so that they can better respond to what you're going through and what you're doing. There's a free tool to download and it's cooltocry.com. It's called the Feels Wheel. It's got 130 something emotions on it. There's instructions on how to use it. It is really simple to use, really powerful to use, and it's free. I don't want anything. I don't want anything in return. Just go to itscooltocry.com. If you're having conversations about your mental health already, this is going to amplify them. This is going to make them even better. And if you're not having conversations about your mental health, this could be a really great stepping stone to give you the confidence to find the right words to say in front of someone when you're ready to have those conversations, and give yourself the best chance possible to have the best conversation possible to look after your mental health the best way possible.
Brilliant way to finish. The Feels Wheel. It's brilliant. It's brilliantly named. I love it. And of course, give us that website again, Jacko.
It's cooltocry.com, and if you're there downloading the Feels Wheel, you can buy some shirts or some hoodies. That would help us.
Some lovely, lovely merch. I tell you what, the merch is magnificent. Me and Mrs. Davis did request some muscle tops, so hopefully they're on the agenda for the summertime. I like to get the armpits out a bit, but they are magnificent. I'm going to get a few t-shirts. What's been the most populous item out of everything you got there, brother?
Well, the t-shirts have been on there for the longest, and the t-shirts themselves, they've probably raised about 10 grand for charity.
Fantastic.
And between the long sleevers and the hoodies that have only been on there a couple of months, they're going well as well. But Rick, we're both in Melbourne. It's cold as a mother-in-law's kiss down here, so I hope the hoodies is going to start to be a bit more popular.
The hoodies are amazing. If you're watching Jacko chat, you look at that hoodie behind him. It's magnificent, really good kid. But again, provokes the kind of graphic that makes you feel warm. You feel like you are not alone, pretty much, which I think is the greatest thing you could ever do in the world. So really well done, mate. Before I let you go, where do we find you on the socials?
Find us on the socials. The handle is at itscool_to-cry. Give us a follow if you like something. Comment if you love it. Share it. Get the conversations happening. Get the conversations going in the comments. Get the conversations going in your DMs, and question what I'm saying. If you don't agree with what I'm saying, let's hear it, because that's the way we're going to get better at having better conversations and making something that's quite complex, which is mental health, making it really simple for everyone and getting everyone on board with knowing what's going to help their own mental health.
Couldn't agree more. And Jack says it so well, and he's extremely passionate, knowledgeable, and well educated on the subject. So I thank you today, mate. You've been an absolute ripper. We'll do some more stuff with Jacko. Might do some Insta lives. We'll get him in for a face-to-face chat, just to catch up on how it's all going. We'll get some kit out as well. We'll put some links in the show notes, to obviously to the shop and to everything else. But hopefully, I've got no doubt that everyone would have got a lot out of this. And hopefully, if you are in a similar situation, what Jack might have explained, that you can take a lot out of it. I've taken a lot out of it, a shitload, and I had no idea what we're going to talk about. I knew the preface of it, but the way Jack's articulated has been second to none. So I'm sure you will take a lot out of it. Jack Davis, I thank you for your time.
Rick, mate, thanks very much. And just like we said last week, there's always new questions that I get that I really enjoy fielding. So thanks for all your questions. They were awesome.
Pleasure, mate. Hey, Rise Up crew, it's been an absolute pleasure to have Jack Davis on today. By listening to this, you've made yourself hopefully a little bit more weaponized and robust. You've done something that's going to make you better tomorrow, and it is a magnificent day to be alive.